Well, good afternoon. I'm absolutely delighted to be here in Riyadh for my third visit and participation in the Global Competitiveness Forum. I want to talk to you briefly during our lunch about the competitiveness journey. It's a third millennium journey of leadership, and it's being accomplished in an era of great turbulence, transition, and transformation. This is the 5th anniversary of the Global Competitiveness Forum, and I want to formally commend and acknowledge the leadership of Governor Amir al-Dabaa and his fantastic team at SAGIA, who are not only innovators and leaders, but they're change agents. And again, this is part of our journey of competitiveness, a journey with really a beginning but never an end. You know, the Saudi Oxford Leadership Program, its purpose and its design, it's really at the core of what dynamic competitiveness policy and action agendas have to be about. And that is why, because ultimately, and we know this, people are everything. And the leadership that we exhibit throughout our lives is a part of competitiveness. You know, I was thinking a little bit before these remarks, because tomorrow I'm going to be on the panel with the governor on the 10 by 10 initiative of SAGIA to make Saudi Arabia, the kingdom, the 10th most competitive nation in 10 years. So I was thinking a little bit about the power of the concept and number of 10. You know, 10 is a numerical cluster. It's a decimal unit. It's a symbol of time. You know, this month we've just entered the second decade of the third millennium. It's part of our monetary currencies. And 10 is a building block for so many conceptual frameworks as well. So I want to talk about leadership as I to the 10th power. It really has exponential value creation. And personally, the number 10 is important to me because I'm going into my 10th year as the leader of the U.S. Council on Competitiveness. And this year we'll be celebrating our 25th anniversary of our continuous journey to make our nation a nation with continuous productivity growth, delivering standard of living to all our citizens, and ensuring success in global markets. You know, we think a lot about what is the meaning of competitiveness. Is competitiveness an aspiration? Is it an end state? Can it be measured? Is it static? Is it dynamic? And is competitiveness policy and strategy something that requires a leadership agenda embedded in everything we do? And so I will posit right now that the competitiveness journey is a journey of leadership, of action, and impact, not just on our future, but on every single individual, for our communities, our societies, for our cultures, and of course for our businesses, the startups, the small, medium firms that in the United States create so many of our jobs, and of course, large global enterprises that operate around the world, all collectively that are working together to solve so many of the global challenges facing our world. And of course, we're living in a world of great risks and challenges. We heard that this morning in the outstanding discussions on the Global Risk Panel. But also, it's a time of tremendous opportunity and rewards. You know, we've heard a lot about this incredible acceleration of technology, interconnectivity and communications. One of the things we haven't really talked about, and I hope we do at some point, and we do a lot of this work at the Council on Competitiveness, is this mist of the scientific revolutions that we are living in and creating. No time in human history have we seen the convergence of the digital, the genetic, and the atomic revolutions. And this is going to rewrite the whole rules of production and services in genetic, atomic, and biological code. So we're in this new third millennium of vast knowledge, inconceivable opportunities to solve grand challenges, I would say, that from our perspective at the U.S. Council on Competitiveness, we really believe that the grand challenge of the intersection of energy security, water, and food is really at the heart of that list, coupled, of course, to the tremendous growth in population, the emergence of people living in cities. And so the question I want to posit is, how are leaders going to navigate this new global landscape of complexity, challenge, and change? I would say that leaders have to thrive and embrace the opportunity. They have to be people that are imbued with hope, optimism, energy, and a commitment to success. Leaders are really trailblazers. They're explorers, and they take us to the new world. So let me share with you my concept of competitiveness leadership, I to the 10th power. For the leaders who build and will shape the new world we will bequeath to our children, our grandchildren, and generations to come. So the sort of 10 traits of leaders, and I will very briefly share these with you. The first, of course, is that leaders are doers and leaders imagine. They have ideas and they have vision. They see the impossible, but they recognize what is possible. When the U.S. Council on Competitiveness was created 25 years ago, it was a vision of leaders. The leader of Hewlett-Packard, the leader of Caltech, and the leader of one of our dynamic unions who said, we need to come together to understand what is competitiveness, what does it mean to the future of our country? And that in itself was an innovation and an example of imagination and leadership. The second aspect of I to the 10th power of leadership is innovation. Leaders are always trying new things. I've mentioned they're risk takers, but they're not reckless. They know that you have to reinvent, reconceive, improve, and in the process of that innovation, you have to tolerate some messiness. Everything is not done in a straight line. Innovation is not linear. Innovation is a process. The third aspect of leadership to the 10th power is that leaders are investigators. Leaders are learners. They're inquisitive. They want to inform themselves in the broadest possible way, and they want to move to not only dispel ignorance, but to move beyond that in their quest to learn and investigate and inform. And so at the Council on Competitiveness, we are constantly investigating. Right now, we have launched a major initiative to look at third millennium manufacturing. I talked a little bit about this at lunch already. Many think manufacturing's dirty, dumb, dangerous, and disappearing. Couldn't be farther than the truth. Manufacturing is an extended enterprise. It's in profound transformation. We're moving to an exascale, third millennium manufacturing enterprise, and we're investigating it, informing it, and we're going to lead that transformation. The fourth is that leaders have to illustrate and illuminate this vision, the innovation, and their investigative process. If they cannot communicate and illustrate these things, we will not, as leaders, be able to marshal the forces for the change. And so leaders are great at creating stories and telling stories. They are indeed storytellers. The fifth is that leaders are initiators. The initiation of the 10 by 10 strategy here is an example of leadership in action, leadership initiating. Leaders do not like inertia. Leaders do not like inertia. And in fact, they don't like the status quo. And if they had something they could ban in their organizations, it would be staying still, don't move, keep the status quo, and be inert. The sixth quality of these principles of I to the 5th power of competitiveness leadership is that leaders include people. They're inclusive by design. They are interconnectors. They realize that in order to have the vision and to innovate and to investigate and illustrate, they have to be inclusive. So they're looking for people from all different walks of life, different cultures, different ways of looking at problems, and they bring them together in the innovation competitiveness journey. We've done this at the U.S. Council on Competitiveness, and I can tell you it has not been easy. One little story is that we had a major U.S. corporation, a member who didn't like labor unions for a variety of reasons. And one of these big labor unions was coming to our meeting, and this major CEO called me and said, "You cannot have him at your meeting. If you have this individual at your meeting, I will walk away, and the whole thing will just blow up." So I let a day go by, and I called back, and I said, maybe it would be good just to hear what this person thinks. He said, "All right, but you're taking a risk." So being a little ornery, I sat them next to each other at our meeting. And our great chairman at the time, Chad Holliday, the CEO of DuPont, had everybody go around the room and talk about what was their most compelling issue. This is a couple years ago. And both of these individuals talked about sustainability and moving to the green economy. And so they bonded. After the meeting, both of them called up and said, "I have to thank you, Deborah, because if you had not done this, we would have never in the world met together. We would have been hostile." And they've actually now have a new collaborative initiative together. So that's the power of leadership when you're inclusive. The seventh point is that leaders inspire and they ignite. They ignite action. They are not isolated. They don't sit on the sidelines. And leaders have to know when is the right time, when are the right circumstances to ignite the action that takes us forward. And the eighth quality or principle or characteristic of this I to the 10th power leadership is interest. How do you galvanize interest? Well, one of the properties, I think, of this leadership of the future is that leaders have to create communities of interest first. Gather those who are interested in a problem and need a solution. But they have to go beyond that, because you can have many shared communities of interest, but you don't make the progress, you don't advance until you have a community of shared effort. It's when the effort comes together that you harness the interest for movement. And the ninth quality, and I've already alluded to this, is integration and interconnectivity. Everything in our world is integrated and interconnected. We know that's true in nature. We know that's true how we live in our families and our communities. So leadership in competitiveness policy has to be an integration effort. You can't just focus on education or regulatory issues or capital issues or technology. You have to integrate the whole panoply to get an ecosystem approach. And then the 10th and final principle, and it perhaps is the most important really going forward, is how leaders instill integrity. Integrity is about trust, transparency, and ethics. And in order for leaders to lead, and of course I believe leaders have to first be followers, they learn in that stage of their career from the ethics, the integrity, the trust, and the inclusion that all leads for ethical integrity. So let me conclude by saying that all of us in this room, and the young people we heard from yesterday that were celebrated with their awards, they are leaders. They're leaders in the making, they're leaders now. Every day when we get up, when we come to meetings such as this fantastic Global Competitiveness Forum, we're making choices. Which way are we going to turn in the road when we're at the crossroads? So let me conclude by saying I'm very proud that with Governor Amir Al-Dabba's leadership and Sagia and others in this room, we've taken a new leadership path to create the new Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils. These are the leaders of competitiveness councils around the world. We each have our own path, we each have our own journey, but we know we need to learn and come together to create something that's bigger. The sum is greater than all of our parts. So we've launched this. We'll be meeting tomorrow. We're going to, over the next year, and you'll have this next year, I hope. We'll share with you this. Not only our principles of competitiveness policy, but we're going to capture the best practices, the best thought leadership around the world to share and grow from. I took heat in my own organization for pushing this. Some of my leaders on my board said, Deborah, why are you doing this? You're president of the U.S. Council on Competitiveness. You need to be working at home in America. Why are you running off to Saudi Arabia? I believed in this. I shared the vision with my colleagues, and today this is a new organization that will make competitiveness policy a platform for global growth. I want to leave you with some words of a great American revolutionary leader, Captain John Paul Jones. Some of our British colleagues may not like the memory of John Paul Jones, since he took the battle for American freedom right up to the shores of Britain, and he defeated one of their great ships in a battle. But what John Paul Jones said is something that we all need to embed in what we do every day. And let me quote his remarks. "It seems to me to be a law of nature, and inflexible and inexorable, that those who will not risk cannot win. But competitiveness in leadership is not winning against others. It's winning the race to come together, to collaborate, and create something much greater than any of us can do alone." So let us all be leaders to the I power as competitiveness path breakers into the future. Thank you so much.